could you say that? How could you tell me something like that? That they deserved it, that they asked for it.
I don't think they can get in.
You know, 18 months that place, Gaza, has been a prison where the international community has just suffocated it. Medea, Tig and I went we were there about 2 weeks before we went back on the next trip was 60 people. What we saw there in the very beginning in that first trip was just horrendous. The level of devastation, the number of homes that were crushed, the number of medical facilities crushed, the government infrastructure crushed. It was so compelling that we felt we had to come back and get other people to go, and that's how this 60-person delegation came about. She was in Gaza before we even got there. She was with the National Lawyers Guild delegation, and she's going to be speaking with us in just a minute. Noura Erakat, she's going to be with us. Well, what we'd like to do in the very first is have you see a voice of a Palestinian living in Gaza and have him tell you what has happened to him. So Paul, if you could run that video. Attack of the Israeli Defense Forces. 22 days that small, tiny place called Gaza. 40 kilometers long, 8 kilometers wide as the average. That place that was attacked for 22 days using U.S. military aircraft, F-16s, Apache helicopters, sending in white phosphorus shells. That the remains of those shells burned into the skin of women and children. Of the dime bombs that were tungsten that cut off arms and limbs. That man was a part of trying to see his family. He was standing at the Rafah gate, the gate at Egypt, the Egyptian border, where so many people, so many Palestinians, so many international groups have installed because the Egyptians have had that border closed and will only open it under the direst of circumstances. And indeed, when after the 22-day siege, the 22-day attack during the siege, that the people of Gaza were hungry. They had no fuel left. The electricity, the generators were going down. That finally the Egyptians started opening up some of the borders for infrequent times. Even today, right now, the United Nations Office of Humanitarian Assistance is saying that less than 40% of the goods that need to go into Gaza are getting in there. That indeed malnutrition is there. It is a horrific, horrific thing that the international community is condoning by blockading Gaza. We hope that by the pictures and the sounds and the stories that we have to tell you today, that you will be ever more committed to helping the people of Gaza, the people of the West Bank, in a tremendous struggle that they have to regain a place for them to live.
And all over the West Bank. So this is a small token of our appreciation for the love and kindness that you showed us as we were getting ready to leave, and for the letter that you gave us the honor of delivering on your behalf to the women of Gaza. So, thank you. And Jeremiah, where are you? We want to also thank you for your love and support, because it was at the Tavern Inn that we held that wonderful fundraiser that I wasn't able to attend, and I really missed it. But thank you so much.
February on a fact-finding delegation to Gaza. We were interested in investigating war crimes, and particularly we wanted to investigate whether or not Israel deliberately targeted civilians and civilian infrastructure, whether or not Israel deliberately impeded the access of medical personnel such as the Red Cross and the Red Crescent, and whether or not the Army used illegal weapons or alternatively used legal weapons in illegal ways. And unfortunately, we found that there were violations on all counts. We conducted this investigation over a week. There were 7 attorneys, 1 law student, and 1 documentarian We used an affidavit form that was provided by the firm Hickman and Rose. You might be familiar with them. They're in the UK. Daniel Makover was the attorney who issued the warrant for Doron Olmag, the Israeli general who is responsible for ordering the dropping of a 1-ton bomb onto the home of Salah Shhadeh in Gaza in 2002. The UK judiciary issued an arrest warrant for him. It was leaked to him that he would be arrested if he disembarked from his plane. After landing, he never left the plane. It stayed on the tarmac, and he went straight back to Israel, afraid of being charged with war crimes. Wow. That was a couple years ago. U.S.-based attorneys have done similar actions. We have filed lawsuits for war crimes pursuant to the Alien Tort Claims Act in 2005 against Avi Dichter, as well as Moshe Alon, for crimes committed in Qana in southern Lebanon, as well as Gaza. And so what we are hoping, we found that in the U.S., law is married to politics, and as our political system is very supportive of Israeli policies in the occupied territories, there is very little that we can do without getting these cases thrown out. But we're hopeful that we can use our findings to push for the Arms Export Control Act investigations here in the U.S. We found that the violations not only are violations of international law, but they're violations of U.S. law. So after I share these stories with you, I'm going to task you with an assignment as well, if you'll let me. So here's a picture of Zaytun. Zaytun is an agricultural neighborhood in northern Gaza, and it was the site of serious attack in early January. The story in Zaytun is emblematic of the story throughout Gaza. From the north, in Jabalia, through Gaza, Deir al-Balah, through Khan Yunis in the south, and then Rafah at the very south, which has been bombarded since early 2002, where 4,000 homes have been destroyed because they allegedly sit on top of smuggling tunnels. And these tunnels, which are supposedly used to smuggle arms, have also been the lifeline of the Gazan population, who have no other way to feed themselves since they have been subject to a severe embargo, a debilitating blockade that has prevented access of food, sanitation equipment, pharmaceuticals. And so not only do they may be smuggling arms through these tunnels, but 1,500 winding tunnels are also used to smuggle Coca-Cola, Twinkies, toilet paper, and except for fruit. Apparently Israel has a surplus of fruit, which it pushes on to the Gazans whether they want them or not. I'm sure it's one arbitrary act that they're not complaining about. So in Zaytun, I'll go on to the next picture. You can see that the entire neighborhood has been destroyed. There's only 3 houses standing now in Zaytun, and those were the homes that were made into military outposts by the army. The rest of the homes were arbitrarily destroyed. You can see homes where people didn't necessarily have the opportunity to pack and evacuate. They were forcibly removed and their homes were destroyed. Their living basic needs like their clothing, refrigerators, food, medicine are left destroyed. But before I move on,